Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chief Robert Boyce. I'm the Chief of Detectives in the NYPD. With me is Special Agent in Charge Brian Parman of the FBI. He's also of the Joint Terrorist Task Force. I have John Miller, of course, with me, and Jim Waters from the NYPD. We also have Paul Ciora, who's the CO of the JTTF in the NYPD, and Chief Joe Kenny, who's the Chief of Queens South Detectives. This afternoon at about 1 p.m., a joint operation by members of the NYPD and the FBI did effect the arrest of Victor Kingsley, a 37-year-old male who lives right behind us at 142 East 43rd Street. This male is wanted in the homicide of George Ray, a 73-year-old male, which occurred in the 105 precinct on July 28th of 2017 at approximately 5 o'clock in the evening. This 7-month investigation to the day brought us to this Brooklyn block where the NYPD Detective Bureau asked the assistance of the Intelligence Bureau and the JTTF. A search warrant is currently being conducted at this location. George Ray was killed by an IED, an improvised explosive device, left at his doorstep of a residence on 222nd Street in Queens that was owned by Mr. Ray. He did not live there. George Ray was not the intended target of the IED. The intended target was a New York City police officer who Mr. Kingsley thought lived there. He did not live there. The cylinder IED was addressed to this police officer. We believe the IED was retaliatory for an arrest of Kingsley in January of 2014 that happened on this very block. He was in possession of a stun gun at the time, and he was. This is in the 6th, 7th precinct in East Flatbush. An extensive investigation through data mining, video surveillance, and numerous interviews identified Kingsley as the perpetrator. I'd like to thank the Intelligence Bureau, the JTTF, and of course Queens South Detectives and the 105 Squad that were able to link Kingsley to this homicide. A lot of work in a 7-month period. It brought us to this afternoon some justice for the Ray family. I'd like to introduce Special Agent in Charge Brian Parman of the FBI.
Very briefly, there is no place in civil society for the spreading of fear or intimidation through the use of violence, murder, or destruction. I commend the efforts of the joint NYPD FBI investigative team and think it's a model of collaboration in bringing us to this point in this investigation. No doubt in my mind that the actions here today saved innocent lives into the future, and thank you very much for that. I'll turn it back over to you.
As Chief Boyce said, George Ray was an unintended and innocent victim of this cowardly attack. He died a violent, terrible, and extraordinarily painful death that resulted from this improvised explosive device, a package bomb in a cylinder that was meant to be opened by the target, and it was meant to function in the way that it did. This investigation literally involved an individual who went to great lengths to conceal his identity and existence as a suspect in this case. He became that needle in the haystack that the New York City Detective Bureau, Queens Homicide, the 105th Precinct Squad, Intelligence Bureau detectives lending their expertise, Intelligence Bureau analysts, and finally the work of the Joint Terrorism Task Force and their ability to go through massive amounts of data to help find that needle in the haystack. So this was, as Chief Boyce said, this was a remarkable investigation, one that the culprit in this case did not intend to be discovered in, and it is owed to the work of a lot of dedicated people who spent many months looking for that single clue that would lead to the identity of an individual. What you see going on behind us today, is the execution of a federal search warrant pursuant to a federal complaint that was unsealed in the Eastern District of New York a short time ago, detailing these charges and the evidence behind them. You have the New York City Police Department bomb squad and special agent bomb technicians of the FBI painstakingly going through that house. As is outlined in the application for the search warrant and the complaint, they expected to find explosive precursors and chemicals that were ordered, that were not only consistent with the construction of the device in the 105th precinct homicide, but were also indicative of the potential attempt to make more devices. That's going on right now, and because they have found some precursor type chemicals, they have found some consistent components, and there are other areas they have to search. That's why the street remains closed, and if we have to remove material that is considered hazardous, that will be done by the NYPD Emergency Service Unit working with the bomb squad using the TCV, or the Total Containment Vessel, which is specially designed to carry explosive material. So our operation here is still in mid-swing. The search isn't complete. We have other areas to look in, and this could go on for some time.
Okay, we'll take a few questions.
Take any of your questions you may have.
What's in the cylinder exactly? What material?
It was a flash powder. It burned. It was a trigger, a booby trap. If you opened it, an electric device lit the flash powder and came on to Mr. Ray. It seared most of the skin on his body. So he died from an infection. Mr. Ray lingered for 4 days painfully fighting that off. So it was flash powder that was also, we were able to identify, that came to this home. Just prior to that homicide, other materials that went into that bomb, we believe, were in that cylinder.
Can you be more specific as to what led you to him today?
Sure.
At the
They
cylinder?
said some intense data mining. The officer's name was on the cylinder. That was the key. Now, we went in a lot of different directions. People who lived at that home at the time, but mainly the officer was the key point in our investigation. We kept that confidential, and we're going to continue to keep his name confidential. But he was the one we started looking back with him. He helped us in our investigation. We brought him on board. He actually works for me. He's an detective bureau. So it's we went from there, and we were able to pull it back to Mr. Kingsley.
How did he manage to elude you for 7 months?
Case of Lou, case of finding the right piece. There's a lot of subpoenas that go out. There's a lot of data mining. This is an intensive work. That's why we brought in our partners from the FBI. So I wouldn't use the word eluding. I would use the word it took us this long to get there.
Does Kingsley have a military background, or how was he able to construct his home?
That is part of the ongoing investigation, what his background, where he learned that, through social media, we would think. All right, there's some degree, I think at the time I called it a mid-level sophistication of the bomb. So that's why we believe where he learned that out, we'll find out in the next couple of days as we go through his computers. So we're not done, it's just the beginning of our investigation. We're going to be here for a while.
Was there a reason? What was the reason you had to dispute with the officer? What was the reason you had to dispute with the officer?
To be determined at this point. It's the only thing we can find that links them right now. He was arrested just up the block here. And the officer was not the arresting officer. His partner was. However, when it went to trial, there was other people involved as well. That's why we believe he went after him, specifically, and others. And that will come out in the coming days.
All right. Okay, folks. Bye. Thank you much.
Good? Thank you.
What? I'll get that in for you.